Hey guys, it's me, EODGamer here, and today I want to share with you 5 efficiency tips for your account. I know a lot of you, as you are approaching Trailblaze level 50 and 60 soon, you'll be having tons of characters to build, but simply do not have enough resources to build a lot of them. I'm going to be sharing with you a few tips and tricks on how I improve efficiency of my account in order to get characters up to a certain level. Just my thoughts and my sharing. Is it the right or wrong way to do things? I'll leave that up to you to decide. It's just my sharing session for you, and this is what I done on my account as well. So I practice what I preach, and the first and most important thing I think out of all of them in terms of investment is you have generally 8 characters. I would say most people will start off with a solid 8 roster. You want to not split your resources evenly across the 8. You want to invest more in 2 types of characters. The first are your primary DPS. So like Jingyuan and Zila, who are like my main damage dealers, will get more of the resources, and these 2 characters likely are your damage dealers. So for any of you who have like 5-star damage dealing characters, you should invest in them first. They are likely the ones that will dish out most of your damage and your like quote-unquote hyper carry characters. So invest in your main DPSs as the priority. I think the second priority in terms of resource will be your tanks or defender type units. For example, like Mark 7 or rather like Fire MC or Jett are 2 examples of tank characters that will be requiring a bit more investment. These characters are soaking up a lot of damage in terms of the encounters, and their defensive stat generally needs a bit more investment in terms of relic levels, so they are more tanky, more of their trace levels, so they can do more for the team as well. I think that's the second investment requirement. Of course, Natasha will probably be coming close into this category as well, so I'll probably round up like the top 5. Some of you who don't have Jett will probably be investing a lot more in Natasha as well. I think your defensive characters are very, very important in the early game, and that's how I allocate my resources. The last 4 slots at this point will be the 2 sub DPSs that you have that complement your main DPS. For those of you who are running hyper carry teams, it doesn't apply where you only have like 1 DPS, but those who are running like a hybrid, like 1 main DPS, a Hun, and maybe a secondary DPS like Pella, this will apply. And the trick and tip will be really, you want to focus on these characters slightly less. They are mainly used for more of like a breaking aspect, as well as maybe contributing a little bit outside of their field. Characters like Pella work very well because she does an AoE defense break. She has buff removal as well as freezing in her kit. The 4th category out of like your main team is a bit counterintuitive, but the lowest priority will be your supports that are buffing. For example, like Esta as well as Tingyun. The reason why I say they are the lowest priority is at no investment and just levels and traces, they still do a lot compared to other characters like your damage dealers or your tanks, who really don't do as much with just levels as well as no investment in terms of their traces. These 2 characters like Tingyun and Esta still do quite a bit. Their kit functions really on their abilities and the light cones that they carry rather than their trace level, and that's I think super efficient for you to know. For me here, I use Esta on a very, very frequent basis, but the incremental bonuses here, as you can see, 2 speed more for all allies for these requirements. Some of you might think it's okay. I guess it depends to each their own. For me, I'm not willing to spend these resources for 2 speed more, especially when it gets to like the purple gear and costs like a lot more. It gets way more inefficient. I'd rather be doing other stuff with that resource, like either grinding more relics for making your main DPS has nicer ratios. This is absolutely atrocious. Yeah, so those are my thoughts in terms of your first 8. Other than that, I think the second efficiency tip that I'll have is when you should actually build out of your 8 characters into 10. And the reason for that is right now it's very efficient to level characters up from in terms of getting the EXP books, essential materials, because you're farming at almost the max efficiency, like the max tier rewards. Relics, on the other hand, you aren't at max efficiency yet. So if you wanted to build a new character and you're maybe Trailblaze level 60, is technically the cheapest it will ever be, even at Trailblaze level 70, because you're farming at the same efficiency. And that's something to know. I will be building, or the second tip is I'll be building a second DPS. If you are building maybe Danheng as maybe your secondary DPS for Jingyuan as a windbreaker, you can consider building a secondary DPS like Susang, who is a very good candidate at breaking enemy weaknesses. This allows you to switch them up very easily, or Susang coming in, Danheng coming out, using basically like the same light cone gear, more or less the same set as well. And that is how I'll increase efficiency. The reason why I say it increases efficiency and is counterintuitive because you are technically spending resources to get a new character up. And the reason for that is when you break enemy weaknesses, you can actually deal more damage in the long run, tackle more content in the floor as well, rather than having to invest all those in DPS, because if you don't have any weakness to address the monsters, you technically need a lot more stats in your DPS to overcome flaws that you have no weakness ability to break. So that's like some other things to consider. I think that will be my second recommendation. Other than that, one thing that I want to give a quick tip for is freeze. I think is super strong. If you don't have a character that adds in a bit of all ice, I highly recommend you consider Pella. She adds a lot of freeze as control, so acting as a little bit more of like a defensive option. Together with defense threat, she basically is like an equivalent of Esther as well as Tingyin in terms of increasing damage output. So that's like tip number 2, build a second DPS. So tip number 3, I think tip number 3 is maybe a mistake that I'm seeing. I personally am not doing myself, and I'm underdoing in fact. So I'm also making a mistake. And the efficiency tip that I have is you want to stop farming relics at a certain point for your main 2 DPSs. A lot of people that I see on the internet right now and showing their huge splashy crit damage, crit rate ratios, like showing me 100, 200 kind of ratios and stuff like that. It's really nice to see that very early on, but one thing to note is inefficient. Why? Is because you are not farming at the highest relic efficiency right now, but at the same time, the incremental cost of getting one additional crit rate roll is very, very high. So if let's say I farm this for an entire week and maybe I got 1 crit rate more, like 1 substat, I could have used the entire time to maybe level up 1 trace or level up a new character to tackle more content. So there's a trade-off in terms of amount of energy you put in as well as the output that you get. But of course, if you get the thrill and adrenaline from getting a new relic, no one's stopping you. I'm just telling you, maybe you want to split your resources half-half. If that's the case, if you enjoy getting these new relics, you want to consider like maybe splitting your resources, half focus on relics, half of the time maybe focusing on stuff that are boring to do. Like no one likes farming for credits and EXP and stuff like that. But do those, they help your account grow in the long run. You get to play more characters too. So that is something to consider. The gauge, I think the ballpark of when is enough to stop farming right now before Trailblaze level 65 is when you find yourself farming just solely because you're looking for the next a stat that has just 1 crit roll higher. Once you're at that point, I think that's a pretty good benchmark that you are probably at a pretty nice, maybe a 60% optimal level for that character already, and you can move on to another character to invest in. And tip number 4, I think this is a pretty standard one, especially if you have been a player of Genshin Impact. Don't level your characters all the way like I did to 60 out of 60. Try to leave them at maybe like 59 or 69, 79, depending on what level you're at. Especially if you are using those characters in the overworld as well. Because for those of you who don't know, you can actually run around and when you hit these monsters you see on the field, you do gain like a bit of additional EXP. And if you're farming, for example, like for some of these materials already, like let's say you need some of these level up materials here, you will be going around the map with your main team. So try to leave them like 1 level away or more if you wanted to, and you will naturally get a free EXP along the way. So this gives you like a little bit more character EXP as you go. Very, very important as well. On the same vein, I will just lump it on together as like a tip, is you can actually go to the parlor car here, go directly to Pom Pom, and I think a lot of people might not know this trick. Let me just find where that little guy is. For those of you who don't know, you can actually click this here, this main quest, and you can just go on the story, and I'll just fast forward real quick. You actually get these like side quests that has a limited time, so this is like 4 hours, and it gives you additional credits. I'm not too sure exactly how many times you can do this, but this is like, I guess this is maybe 3 energy, 4 energy, and it does add up over time, especially if you're doing on multiple days, to just have account efficiency. So not only should you, for example, go around the map and farm all those overworld spots, but you also want to do this like Pom Pom quests to just get a lot more account efficiency for your overall account. And that will be like tip number 4 that I have. And last but not least, I think is tip number 5. I'm just going to mention this real quickly because I don't think everyone will want to do this unless you do tip number 2, which I mentioned earlier. So tip number 5 really is the trick on using this attack planisphere here. The reason why it's very solid is because you are able to, for example, just swap out an entire character's kit. If I just unequip a Yanting one shot, I can put exactly whatever his gear in on another Han character like Danheng. I can put it on another character like Susang, allowing me to have like a physical weakness breaker, a wind weakness breaker, as well as an ice weakness breaker, all of a Han type. And especially if it's like the second DPS, it allows me to tackle a lot of content as well, since I will be mainly relying on my main 2 DPS. My secondary slot can just be swapped out based on what is the content that it requires. This allows me to clear a lot of content, maybe not with max stars, but still clear the content, get the resources more for efficiency for my overall account as well. And those are some tips that I have. If you guys are interested in more efficiency tips, I think you might like this one. If you're maybe struggling without healers in your account, like you don't have Bailu, you don't have Jepat, you might want to know this one right here, where I talk a bit more about March 7, giving you more in-depth information too. And do like and subscribe for more of such future content. And thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video.